Okay, so we're going to start with tax law updates. This course is as current as it can be on the changes for tax year 2019. The IRS is continually sending out guidance. We will update you. Stay tuned to our social media pages, our YouTube channel, Facebook, as well as your email, because we'll send those out via email whenever we receive any updated information from the IRS. So at the beginning, we're going to start with the ACA individual mandate. So the penalty for not having health insurance no longer applies for tax year 2019. And while the individual mandate was not repealed, the penalty or the shared responsibility payment was reduced to 0. There are 3 states that do have their own state-level individual mandate for health insurance. Those are Massachusetts, New Jersey, and the District of Columbia. For 2019, Vermont passed legislation, but that doesn't go into effect until tax year 2020. Now, in saying all of that, this only applies to those taxpayers who did not have health insurance. Those taxpayers who had health insurance through the marketplace, you still will need to rectify or reconcile that using Form 8962. This essentially has just eliminated Form 8965. There's a new form. It's the 1040SR. The 1040SR is for seniors. It is essentially a 1040EZ without the income limits. The only restriction is that they're age 65 or older, and they do the form does require that the standard deduction be claimed, no itemized deductions, so Schedule A's for Form 1040SR. I'm going to show you guys what that form actually looks like. So this is the new 1040SR form, so U.S. tax returns for seniors. It honestly doesn't look any different than the standard 1040. Everything is in the same place. Nothing's really different here. This was just part of the Budget Act. Okay. New supplemental schedules. So for tax year 2018, we had 6 supplemental schedules, so Schedule 1 through 6. The IRS got with Congress, got some clarification, and now they have been redesigned and merged into 3 schedules. Hopefully that'll streamline the filing process, save us all as preparers, printing. There's no reason to print a page that only has 3 lines on it. I'm going to show you what those forms look like as well. So Schedule 1, the additional income and adjustments to income, looks essentially the same. It's really not any different here. When we get down into Schedule 2, this is where we start to see the first biggest changes. This is the additional taxes form. This is where you'll have tax and other taxes, advanced premium tax credit repayment, first-time homebuyer repayments. Those kinds of things will show here. Self-employment tax would also show on Schedule 2. Then we get down into Schedule 3. Schedule 3 is the additional credits and payments. This is where you'll have non-refundable credits, other payments and refundable credits, and in particular, non-refundable credits and refundable credits that don't show on the 1040. So EIC wouldn't show on this, child tax credit, the refundable parts of education credits still show to the 1040. This is going to be things like child tax credit or non-refundable education credit, dependent care expenses, or education credits, or premium tax credits, the estimated tax payments, those kinds of things will show up on Schedule 3. These are the tax brackets. Not much has changed in the tax brackets. We're not seeing any rate changes. The brackets themselves, as far as the AGI limits, those are roughly the same as they were last year. There was a slight increase, but nothing groundbreaking. Same thing with the capital gains tax rates. They did go up, but not a significant amount, and the rates are still the same. Now we get into earned income tax credit. So this is for filing status head of household. So this line here, the first line shows income at max credit. So this is the maximum earned income credit that one can receive if they have 0 dependents. It's $69.20. If they've got 3 or more, it's $14.57. That's the max. That's the income level that they need to be at to receive the max credit, which is the next line. So the max credit for someone with 0 dependents is $529 filing single or head of household. The max credit that anyone can receive is $6,557. The important piece is this last line where you have the phase outs. This is when the credit has gone to zero. So if their AGI is above this line, they won't receive earned income credit at all. This is really important when you're troubleshooting a tax return that doesn't have, that you believe should be qualifying for earned income credit, but the earned income credit isn't showing. Look at this AGI and see if they're over that limit. This is the same table, but for married filing jointly. As a reminder, married filing separate does not qualify for earned income credit. Child tax credits. While there hasn't been a change this year for child tax credit, there were some changes last year that caused a little bit of confusion for taxpayers, for tax preparers. So the child tax credit, the amount publicly talked about is this $2,000 amount. So the truth is the refundable piece is $1,400. So $600 of the child tax credit can only be used to reduce the tax due. $1,400 can get paid back to the taxpayer. An important note on this is in order to claim any portion of the child tax credit, the taxpayer must include a Social Security number for each qualifying child. Now, the taxpayer can have an ITIN, but the dependent or qualifying child must have a Social Security number. Credit for other dependents, ODC, also referred to as the family tax credit, is a $500 non-refundable credit. There is no refundable piece to it. And in order to claim the other dependent credit, the qualifying dependent must be a U.S. citizen, a U.S. national, or U.S. resident alien. No more claiming dependents for this credit that are not living in the U.S. The standard deduction went up about $200 a person for single, married filing separate, married filing joint. Head of household, it went up $350. As again, another reminder, because this was a big change last year, personal exemptions will remain suspended until the 2026 tax season. IRA contribution limits. The IRA contribution limits have increased to $6,000 with a $1,000 catch-up amount for taxpayers over age 50. HSA contribution limits. The HSA account contribution limits have increased to $3,500 for self coverage only and $7,000 for family coverage. 401k contribution limits. The limits have increased to $19,000 for everyone and $6,000 for taxpayers over age 50 making catch-up contributions. It's important, while this may not help your customers or your taxpayers this season, knowing these 401k contribution limits, IRAs, HSA, these are things that they can take advantage of because it will decrease their taxable income. Probably, again, not for this year, but maybe going into 2020, it's something that you can discuss with them. The elimination of entertainment expenses. So entertainment expenses directly related to a taxpayer's active trade or business that are no longer deductible as of tax year 2018 include golf outings, fishing trips, tickets to professional sporting events, and theater tickets. This does apply to your individual Schedule C customers, your Schedule E, Schedule F customers, as well as your partnerships and corporations. Alimony payments. So for divorce decrees that were signed in tax year 2019, calendar year 2019, that have alimony payment requirements, the payer will not be allowed a deduction for payments made, nor will the payee be required to claim the alimony as income on their respective tax returns. That's a big change from those divorce decrees that were signed prior to that. Here's some of the changes for Schedule A. The medical expense 10% AGI limit, so it's now at 10%. Last year, for tax year 2018, it was at 7.5%. Mortgage interest. Now, none of these changed for this year, but we did get quite a few questions about equity loans. You can no longer take a mortgage interest deduction on an equity loan. State and local taxes. This was a big talking point when Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was passed. It is still capped at $10,000 on a Schedule A. However, state and local taxes and property taxes paid while conducting a trade or business, such as rental property, is not capped at $10,000. Charitable contributions, the AGI ceiling limit is increased to 60%. There is one caveat to that, and that is charitable deductions for contributions in exchange for college athletic event seating is denied. They can no longer take those as charitable contributions. Casualty losses. Casualty losses are still allowed, but only for losses declared a disaster by the President. No more theft, fire, storm, shipwreck, or other casualty losses. This one caused a massive amount of confusion, so I definitely want to take a minute and really go through this. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act eliminated the ability for employees to deduct unreimbursed work-related expenses, unreimbursed business mileage, for example, as a deduction on their Schedule A. This has basically eliminated the Form 2106 for almost every taxpayer. There are a few exceptions to that, and I encourage you to take a look at 2106 and really understand what those exceptions to that are. There is no overall limitation on itemized deductions anymore. So AMT, we saw a pretty sizable jump in the exemptions and the phase-outs for AMT. The exemptions went up about $1,400 a person, give or take, and the phase-outs went up $10,300 a person. Moving expenses remain suspended except for military. And there are two caveats here. One is they must be active duty military, and two is they must have a transfer or move order from the military. They can't live off base and then move from one side of town to another side of town, for example, and claim moving expenses. Qualified business income. So QBI was a big change last year, and now we have new forms. Qualified business income, so the simplified computation will go to Form 8995, and the more complex QBI computations will go to 8995A. I'm going to show you guys those forms. So this is the 8995. It's a pretty straightforward form. And then this is the 8995A, which you can see is a bit more complex. It requires some additional follow-through. There's a couple of different columns, different checkboxes, those kinds of things. All right, so that's the end of the tax law updates piece. So now we're going to jump into the software. I'm going to show you one of the big new changes and go over a couple of new things that are in the software for this year. And the first one is this Refund Calculator up here at the top. This now gives you the ability to create an estimate without having to create an entire tax return. It's pretty straightforward. So in this particular case, we're going to mark that they're single and has dependents. So you set the filing status. We're going to go ahead to household. You're going to enter the date of birth. And we're going to go, I have two dependents, 2. And then you get to the income section. And this is a pretty straightforward one. We're going to say the wages are $27,000 and the federal withholdings are $2,265. And this is any adjustments that you would have if they have educators' expenses, alimony paid, that kind of thing. We're going to say next on that. I'm not going to jump into any of the credits here. I just want to do a quick little estimate. So here, you'll see that the results. Okay, so the results show you the part that they're really interested is they're looking at an estimate of about $9,000 refund. And the great part is down here is if they're wanting to do a bank product, the fees are already outlined for you. So what your default fees are. If you click Fee Summary, it'll show you what those fees are so that you have a good idea of what's calculated in that 160, and then you can include in your tax prep fees, for example. That gives you a better estimate of what they actually could be getting back. Now, if you want to create a return off of this estimate, it's really simple. You just click Create Return. You enter their Social Security number, and you move right along into it. So that's been one of the big changes for this year. One of the other changes involves our TaxPass mobile app. Our TaxPass mobile app you retrieve those. Now, in prior years, when you click this retrieval function and you hit OK, your taxpayers were limited to submitting documents a single time. So when they first created the return and copied their or scanned their documents, once they submitted the return, they were no longer able to edit or send any additional documentation. We have updated that function. So now if you need additional documentation from a customer using the TaxPass app, you just tell them to go back into the app and rescan those documents and then submit. And you'll get this option in the client list down here where it says Document Download Only. And that will import those documents into the document archive, which we're going to cover a little bit more in detail when we do the return walkthrough in just a couple of minutes. So now we're going to go through the Office Setup Wizard. If you're a new customer, this should pop up for you automatically. After you've installed the software, when you first log in, this Office Setup Wizard will help you go through what needs to be configured in the Office. And I'm going to give you some tips in here as well. So we're going to talk about this first button here, which is Office. So this takes you into the Office Setup. I apologize for that. We're going to go back. So this will take you into the Office Setup in the Application Settings screen here. So you've got the Office information, and by and large part, most of this information is going to be filled out for you automatically. This comes from the Filing Center. So when we go to e-filing, so there's three things I want to point out in particular in this section here. One is this default EFIN. You want to make sure that you put your EFIN in here so that when you start a new return, all of the EFIN information will be put on the 8879 automatically. And I'm going to show you how to set up that EFIN as well. The other one is auto-generate PINs. This will help you generate those PINs, the taxpayer and spouse PINs, automatically on the 8879, so there's no additional steps for you. Required preparation fees. This applies to your bank product returns only, and this is really just kind of a catch for you to make sure that when you file a bank product that there is a preparation fee listed on that bank application to ensure that you get paid. We're going to go to the Defaults tab next. Inside here, there's three things. Again, I want to point out. One is jump cursor past city and state. There is a built-in zip code database. So when you go into here, as you're typing in the address fields, if you hit tab on the address, it will take you down to the zip code field. You enter the zip code, and it will populate the city and the state. The other one is auto add filing options, and I'm going to show you guys what this form looks like when we create the return. But this is a great form to let your customers know what all of their refund options are, what the fees are, and then actually have them initial and sign off on which one they want. This will prevent them from coming back later and saying that they didn't want the bank product, or they didn't want a direct deposit, when clearly they indicated that they did. The other one is this save section. So you have silently save return on close, which means when you exit the return is going to save automatically. And you also have an auto save after a few minutes. Whichever one is best for you, just depends on how you run your particular business. A couple of the new things that we added this year into the default section is the ability to require cell phone carrier information, require the cell phone, or require email addresses. We're going to go to the general. Now, by and large part, if you were with us last year, this information is going to be filled out for you. If you're a new customer, we're going to talk about these billing schemes just a second when we go further down that list, but this is where you set the default billing scheme so that it loads your preparation fees into the return automatically. Auths audits. We actually have a video on this YouTube channel that will show you what 1040 and the Auths audits, how those works together. But to set those, you just come in here and you do a select all or unselect or select the ones that you want. These will help you with your due diligence with the IRS by asking additional questions when certain things exist. For example, it's going to ask you to double check and get proof of the relationship when EIC has been calculated and the child is not a son or a daughter. Those kinds of things will help you with your due diligence. Text message. So this is the text message setup section. All you need is a Gmail address. You can enter your Gmail here, your password here, and then you're going to activate text, link, and email, and that should take care of it. If you run into any problems with this particular piece, because Google does have some particular settings, just call into support. We'll help you with that. Now we're going to go to the ERO. Now, most of this information in this electronic return originator screen is going to come from your bank application once we've released those on January 2nd. You'll transmit, you'll pick it up, and this stuff will come down. There are a couple of things that will not. One is this cell phone information. The other is this PIN, which is going to be your ERO PIN for the 8879. And then the signature, and you can use an electronic signature pad, or you can use the remote signature option. When you do remote sign, it's going to send a text message by default for the ERO. When you click the link in the text message, make sure that you enter this information exactly as it appears so that you're able to log in, because it may ask you for your social, but it is actually asking for the last 4 of the PTIN and then the name that you have listed here in the ERO's name. That'll allow you to sign. Prepare information. I'm actually going to skip this from here because I have a different way that I prefer to do this, but you can create preparers from this section. Billing. So, you have a couple of options here on the billing when you set your default billing scheme. One is form billing, and this is where you can enter your pricing based on form. I always recommend that you put it in the per item. The base quantity and base price can get a little tricky if you're not sure how to do that. This will charge for each one of those forms. That's the most common thing that our customers use. They either enter it here or they disable the billing entirely, disable the invoicing process, and enter the fees directly onto the tax prep fee directly onto the bank application. You can do the same thing for worksheets or line items. You can set predefined discounts. So if you have a return or a referral or early walk-in, those kinds of discounts, you can set those here. Custom charges, if you have other services or if you want to charge them for a digital copy of the return or a tax planning book, you can add those charges here just by entering the description and the amount. Custom settings, so for Protection Plus, in particular for your audit assistance, you can click Auto Add Financials. This will auto add it to any bank product return. Auto add for non-financials, this will auto add it for non-bank product returns. If you want to add on top of their $44.95 fee, you can. You can add, if you want to add $35, you can just type that amount in here and it will add in with your fees and your billing. Printing. So when you go to the printer settings tab here, our recommendation is to make sure that you check this profit tax return PDF and that you set the printer that you want to print to. It's really the only thing you have to do in here unless you're using one of the signature pads. So we support Topaz signature pads, Scriptel signature pads, and you can use your mouse or touch screen or stylus if you're using it in that capacity for the on-screen signature. In the 1040 return printing, this is where you can set your print packet. You can choose what prints, what doesn't print for the client, for you, those those sections. You just check the boxes that you want to check, uncheck the ones you won't, that you don't want. My recommendation is to make sure that these 2 boxes are checked, which is the consent form and the privacy letter. Those will definitely help. Again, due diligence and security with the IRS. Business return printing works in the same fashion. So you'll set the printer settings here. Print options, quite honestly, you shouldn't ever really need to be in here unless you're directed by customer support. Checks. So this is where we can set up the checks. So you want to go to check inventory, And you want to enter the starting check number after you click Activate. You'll choose the bank. Then you're going to enter the starting check number, the ending check number, and then the check layout version. Most of you will not have a site ID, so you can leave that blank. Now, the check layout version for Santa Barbara is on the check stock itself in the right-hand corner. Republic does not have a check layout version. If you're using any bank but TPG or Republic, then you will print those checks through the bank's website or through the bank's process. Logins. So this is where you'll set up all of your preparer logins. Now the IRS says every preparer must have their own individual login to the software. There's a couple of reasons to do this. One, the IRS says that you should. And two, this allows you to set them up with a preparer shortcut ID. Now this will load all of the preparer information directly onto directly onto the 1040 so that they don't have to re-enter that information. Now in this screen, when you create one, the login ID is what they will use to log into the software. That's their user ID. The login name is their name. I encourage you to enter the email address and cell phone number here and create a password, but the email address and cell phone will help them if they ever have to do a password reset. Now if you are using Republic, each preparer must have their bank ID code, and this is the screen that you would enter that bank ID code. Now, there's access levels, and you can set different access levels for your preparers based on how you want these set up. Everything on the left is what they do not have access to. Everything on the right is what they have access to. You can just remove, add these back however you want. If you need particular help or if you need extra guidance on this, again, contact customer support. That's what we're here for. Audit controls, we already covered. Defaults, we've already covered as well. And then the client letters is the last one in here. Now, these client letters are a little bit tricky because they use what we call merge tags. So these merge tags pull information from the return to create these. I would advise you that if you want help customizing or if you're looking to change anything inside these client letters, contact customer support so that we can kind of go through it with you and make sure that you get exactly what you're looking for. So to disable this box from showing up again after you've completed the software setup wizard, just check the box down here. Now we're going to go through our work in progress overview. So this is the work in progress summary screen, and there's quite a bit of things going on this screen. We're going to start at the top left-hand corner. So 1040 returns is where you'll find all of your individual returns. Business returns is where you'll find all your corporate returns. And then website. Now this website tab will take you to the SimpleTAX support website. This is a great place for you to be able to utilize the knowledge base from inside the software. You can start a live chat with us. You can start a remote session. Once you've contacted support, they may direct you here to launch a remote session. There's IRS links, there's state links, and then there's a link to our YouTube channel as well. This is the menu bar. The menu bar, we have a lot of different options in here. We talked about EF originators and pay preparers when we did the office setup, office setup, printer setup, login accounts, all of these things. You can find the setup wizard by going to setup and then setup wizard. Utility, for the most part, utility is going to be almost exclusively used for support with the exception of one thing, which is this quick reports list. Now, this quick reports list, you can choose pre-existing reports that are already here inside the software and have them come here so that you can get an IRS act count, for example. Reports, there's a variety of reports in here. You have status reports, IRS acknowledgement reports, mailing labels, and client lists. Commands, these are hotkeys. These will show you quick ways to access things. F9 to look up a return, for example, F8 to print a window. And then there's the help section. There's resources here. Where's my refund, identity protection pin, the tax library. All of these things are inside here. Return status codes, for example. Then we get to our toolbar. In our toolbar, we have Add New, which is where you'll click to start a new return. Transmit, it's where you'll click to transmit Lookup. We'll take you to the Lookup screen. We're going to show that in just a second. And Quick. Now, Quick is a great way to use to look up the status of a return directly in the filing center. So if you want to see if a return is funded, but you don't want to have to open the return all the way up, or you're already in a return, you can do that. We also have a built-in payments module. Now, the payments module does not take payments, but it records payments. And then the refund calc that I showed you earlier, and then exit. Then we have the black bar. That's what we refer to it in support. So there's a user ID. We may ask you for this user ID or ask you for this code here. The other thing we may ask you for is the version. This will let us know if you're at the most current version of the software, if you're running into any kind of problem. And you can click Log Out as well from here. Now in this work in progress summary, we have 6 sections. We have tax returns, printing queue, other items, transmit queue, exceptions, rejections, and then quick reports. So we're going to go through each one of these sections individually. So in the tax returns section, you have select a return. But this will take you to the lookup screen. Okay, and in the lookup screen, you have a variety of search criteria. You can search by social, you can search by last name, which is the default. You can search by the date it was acknowledged, the cell phone number, anything you want, the last 4 of the social as well. If you're not sure, or if you just want a full list of the return, leave the search box blank and then click Go. Go will give you a full list of all of the returns that are inside the software. If you want to reorder these items at the top, let's say, for example, you want to have the last date it was modified. If you click and hold, you can drag it anywhere that you want and reorder this any way that you want. Okay? Status summary list. Now this will give you a quick little rundown or an overview of what the status is of the returns. So you get a return count based on the number of returns that had that status. For example, here's the check ready to print. So if I double click, or if I click on it and then click OK, it'll give me a list of all of the returns that have that status. We're going to jump down here to the training returns. This is where I encourage everyone to use the tutorials. We have a tutorial guide that's actually in the software folder, but you can also find it on the support site to actually create training returns and go through those tutorials. It's the best way for you to learn this software, is to really get hands-on with it. An important note, if you create a return in the training mode or in the training module, it will stay there. We cannot move a return from the training mode to live mode. The TaxFast mobile app retrieval. This is where you will actually retrieve any returns that were submitted to your office through the TaxFast mobile app. And we're going to actually go through the TaxFast mobile app next. So once we do this overview. Next is the checks, registers, and activation. We're going to talk about check printing real quick. We've already talked about the check inventory. To print a check, it's really easy. You select the check, you click Print Checks, you're going to enter the starting check number and the ending check number, hit OK, and it's going to send to the printer. 2 bits of advice. 1 is print a test check before you print your first check. Make sure that you know exactly the way that the check needs to go into the check into your printer so that you're not wasting check stock. And 2, I always encourage people to never print more than 3 or 4 checks at a time. If there's a problem and you print 50 checks, you may end up having to reprint 50 checks or being out of check stock because they printed upside down. Okay? In the check register, this will show you all of the checks that you have. Now, it's important to note 2 things: void and reprint. Now, there is a difference between void and reprint. If you void the check, you'll have to go through the bank's process to have that check reissued. If you reprint the check will move from the check register to the checks to print, and you'll be able to print the check again. To reprint a check, you should have the physical check in your hand or know that the physical check does not exist. For example, if you printed the check on plain white paper, that would be Or if you printed the check and nothing came out on the printer, you could reprint. If the customer lost their check, contact the bank and find out what their process is before you reprint the check. Because you will get a notification when you go to reprint a check that if that check clears twice, the bank is going to hold you liable for that second check that should not have cleared. Okay? The next one to note is this federal acknowledgement letters. These are the ACK letters, and when you open them, oh, I can't, I'm in demo. I'll show you what that looks like actually inside a return. But once you select these and you go to open or print, then they remove from this list, but you can get them back. And I'm going to show you where that is when we get into printing inside the return. Same thing with state acknowledgement letters. Now we're down into other items. And the other items, you have software updates, secure email, bulletins, your appointments. Software updates are really easy. You click here, you click apply all, you click close. You click restart, program restarts. Now, if you're in a network environment, please make sure that everyone is logged out of the software. They have closed the software completely before you apply updates. Secure emails are going to be emails that come from us specifically to you. For example, this is a new central site registration email. It's pretty basic. Bulletins are going to be anything that applies to tax preparers or the IRS or anything like that industry-wide. So for example, here is when the IRS shut down the modernized e-filing, so they were no longer taking returns. They gave us the date, and we're going to share that information with you. So the last date to file any returns for tax year 2019 was November 16th. Now you can print or you can delete these. Now we're going to slide over to this transmit. We're going to go through the transmit process when we finish a return, but I want to show you because you will transmit to pick up updates. So in here you see I have version report, registration, update requests. To see if any returns are actually being transmitted, click filter. It'll show you if you need to remove a return for whatever reason, select that return and click remove. It'll put it back into an EF return status, which means the return has not been filed and it is ready for you to edit and modify. So we're going to transmit because I have an update I need to pick up. So you transmit, everything on the left is what you're sending, everything on the right is what you're receiving. This is where you'll see things like check print, software updates, and it will show you in the communication results exactly what's been sent and then what happened. Now we're going to move down into the rejects. This is where you get into the exceptions and rejects. So if you click Federal Rejects, it gives you a listing of those rejections. If we were to open this return, by default it's going to come directly to what the rejection is. Select the rejection and click Details to get more information. This will show you what the reject is in full. If you have any questions about a rejection, again, customer support is always here to help. The other thing that you can do, and I'm going to bounce back out and go back in. The other thing that you can do is actually double click the rejection here. This is part of our point and shoot error correction. If you double click, it will take you to the field that's causing the problem. So these are state refused rejects and Fed refused. Now Fed refused and IRS rejects are two different things. IRS rejections are coming from the IRS because there's a problem with the information inside the tax return. Refusals are coming from central site, and there's a variety of reasons why that could happen. I'm going to show you one, for example. This had errors that we knew. This one already had errors in the return, and we knew that they would not take it. So we put it back for you. One of the most common refusal reasons that you'll see is that the return is locked to another user ID. If you see that message, contact customer support. We can tell you what the next steps are to be able to file that return. This will also show you your pending and completed remote signatures, and we're going to go over remote signature in that return walkthrough, which will happen in just a minute. And then again, the quick reports. The quick reports is great for sending mass text messages. So for example, this is a report of everyone who has a status of checks ready. So if I want to send to all of them, I just click there and then I click send text. type in my information, and then hit OK to actually send to the text. If I just want to send to these two, I can press down the Control key. So if I want to select all, I press Shift and select the last one, the first and the last one. If I just wanted to send to Felix and Jose, you hold down the Control key and click on the ones that you want to send and do the exact same thing. You click Send Text. So now we're going to add a new return. So when you click Add New, by default, it comes up to the double entry of the Social Security number. This is going to help with accuracy. It's going to make sure that you're not entering the Social Security number incorrectly. If the taxpayer is applying for an ITIN, just click that W7. It'll give an all 9 Social Security number and open the return. So by default, we open to the client data screen. It goes right to the date of birth. So taxpayer's date of birth. And you can hit Tab to move between the keys or between the fields. Now, one of the things I want to point out when I first get to this occupation is you have choices. You have some links down here. Choices, worksheets, form links. If you click choices on this field, it gives you a list. These are some default occupations that are already in there. It tells you in this gray bar at the bottom if the field is required and what information it's looking for in that field. And here we're looking for the taxpayer's occupation. These are the fields that you'll mark if they're dependent, or if they're dependent of another person, if they are blind or disabled. Now, if you're wanting to send them a text message, please ensure that you ask them, is it okay if I send you a text message regarding your return, or if I send you, a text message so that you can sign your tax return. There are still some people who do not have unlimited text messaging, so you want to let them know that text message and data rates still apply or may apply. But you also need to check this box if they agree and select the carrier. This is another example of using choices. You can select the carrier here. If for whatever reason the carrier is not listed in there, please contact customer support. We'll do everything we can to get it added. If they give you driver's license information, you're going to put that here. Then you're going to enter the filing status. Down here again at the bottom in the gray bar, it's going to show you what it's looking for in that field. So this is a required field, and we're going to set this person as head of household. You'll notice when I clicked Tab right there off the filing status, because I selected head of household, I didn't select married filing joint or married filing separately, it bounced right past the taxpayer or the spouse information and directly into the address field. You'll see again, we talked about the jumping the cursor past city and state. It went right to the zip code field, and you'll see it auto-populates the city and the state here. They give you bank account information. You want to make sure that you enter that here. You can't pull the information into the bank application from here. Client referral types. This is where you'll answer the question about Protection Plus or the audit assistance. If they want it, you answer yes. If they don't, you answer no. Now this question in this section for 2020 is going to be different. Because of the changes in the tax laws, this is not going to apply to everyone. There'll be a singular question now, I believe, that says, did you receive health insurance through the marketplace? Then we'll get down here into the dependents. You can start typing in the relationship. You can hit choices. And this is the first example we've had of worksheets. So if you click worksheets, you'll be able to actually see worksheets, and you can continue to add dependents, as many as you need. This field, you're going to want to enter the number of months that the dependent lived with you. By default, they're going to choose the dependent code of 1, dependent live with taxpayer, because you said 12 months. But there are other options by clicking choices again. This is the EIC code. Now, by default, they're going to assume that they're EIC eligible. Where you would update this information is if they are a student, or they're disabled, or they're kidnapped, or it's none. Same thing with child tax credit. If they have dependent care expenses, you can mark that here for Form 24 or 41. You can enter X or D if they're disabled, or leave it blank. This state ID field, 90% of the time you're going to leave blank. It only applies to Illinois and Arizona. So that's where we're at. We've already completed the client data sheet. So if I come up to the top and I click refresh, you'll see we have new forms. So now the 8867 is there. Why do files head of household? So even if there's no income, the 8867 is going to generate, because head of household is part of due diligence now. So we're going to go add a form. We're going to get some income on this return. So click Add Form. By default, it goes to W-2 because the W-2 is the most common form added to a tax return. We have a couple of options here. All of the forms are listed in this box. You can also go to Index, and you can sort them by supplemental forms. So, for example, you have a 1099-C, but you're not sure where that goes, or a 1099-K, you're not sure where that goes. This will tell you where those things are reported, and if you double-click, it will take you right where you need to go. To add a state return, you click State, you select the state that you want to add, and then you select the form, the state form that you want to add, the individual income tax. Be aware some states have different. For example, Alabama has individual for residents, and then a non-resident income tax. So if you want to make sure that you select the right one for your customer. So we're going to go add a W-2. There is an EIN database, so you can choose it from here, or if you start entering the EIN, it will pull that information automatically. Let's say 16,000. Pretty straightforward. You're going to fill out the W-2 exactly as it appears. Now, there are some gray boxes here. Social Security wages, Medicare wages, Social Security tax withheld, Medicare tax withheld. If this calculates, you don't have to enter anything here. This calculated amount is the same as it is on the W-2. Then you don't have to enter anything in these blue boxes. If it is different, then you want to put the amount that the W-2 shows in the blue boxes. You do not want to try to override any dark gray fields. So now we're done. So we can hit refresh. And now you'll see on the left-hand side, we've got the earned income credit, we've got line 1 income worksheets, schedule EIC, 8812, EIC, and the due diligence now have all been added to this return. Okay. Now for this taxpayer, we're going to say that they have a small side business. So we're going to go add form. And the rule inside this program is you want to add schedules before you add supplemental income. So if you have a Schedule C, or if you have a 1099, for example, you want to add the Schedule C first, then add the 1099 miscellaneous. So we're going to add this Schedule C, and we're going to start looking. So we're going to say they do some painting on the side. In this business codes, you can hit choices again, or you can press F3 on your keyboard. So we're just going to choose one at random. This is like any other normal standard Schedule C. You want to make sure that if they have this information or if this is different, then you can do that. You want to set the accounting method. You want to answer all of these questions. Did they start? Yes. Did you make any payments? No. And then you get to that QBI section. So here's your choices. Qualified trader business, specified trader business, not eligible for the deduction. We're going to set it as specified. Or rather, I'm sorry, we're going to go with qualified. Then you're going to kind of jump down into this gross receipts and sales. Now, if you go here, and you've got income from 1099 miscellaneous, 1099C in the start gray field, if you click form links, it's going to bring up the forms. So you can add your 1099 miscellaneous. Again, EIN database. And we're going to enter this information into line 7. We're going to say it's $2,300. Nothing groundbreaking. Now in this link to box, you want to click choices and select the Schedule C that you want it to go to, or where you want it reported to. You hit OK. We're going to hit refresh. Now we're going to go back to that Schedule C. So now that income is here. If they have gross receipts and sales that are not reported on a W-2 as a statutory employee, or a 1090 or any of the 1099 forms listed here, then you'll add those up and put them into the gross receipts. We're going to get down into expenses. Now, part 2 in this expenses, all of these fields you can enter information into, but I'm going to focus in particular on 2 fields. One is the car and truck expenses for mileage, and one is for depreciation. Okay, so for car and truck expenses, go down to part 4, check this box where it asks if you want to carry this information up to line 9, enter the date that the vehicle was placed in service, and then enter the mileage. Then you're going to answer question lines 48, 46, 47A, and 47B. Now, when we go back up, you'll see that it is calculated at mileage. Now, if they want to do actual expenses, they have to use the car and truck worksheet. So to get to the car and truck worksheet, you're going to go to Add Form. You're going to click Depreciation, and you don't want to use the Schedule C here. You want to use the car truck vehicle allocation. So then you're going to create a new asset. You're going to choose this gas-powered automobile. You want to give it a name. The date it was placed in service. Okay, and you do have to enter the cost basis and answer these questions. So we're going to set the cost basis as $21,000 for this cute little Dodge Avenger. We're going to answer all these questions. Now here's where you can force actual expenses over standard mileage depending on what you want to do. I always say no, let's let the program. This last question you do not have to answer. So now we go mileage and expenses. So you want to enter the total vehicle miles. So in this case, we're going to do 1,600. And then you want to put the mileage here, 1,600. And then we can start putting in the actual parking fees and tolls. And again, answer the question. So when we close out, we do return the list. We go close because I have this selected. You'll see that the car and truck now has been updated. It also has done the depreciation for the vehicle. Now, if they want to do depreciation for the vehicle and take the actual expenses and miles, all of that is fine. To access the asset manager, though, if they want to do other things in the car and truck worksheet, you can go back exactly where we came, which is Add Form Depreciation, or you can click Depreciation over here on this left-hand side. You're going to do the Schedule C for anything other than a vehicle. So we'll do a new asset. We'll put in computer software. We're going to call it okay, and then we're going to go to this depreciation. Now in this depreciation, you've got to choose, and a lot of times, what it is that you're looking at, whether it's listed property, whether it's ADI. So even if I put 1,500 in here, for example, and I go depreciation, I'm probably not getting anything unless I adjust or override. So there's no depreciation on this one, but see, it will still calculate all of those things. I took the section 1 right now. Now, if we go down, this is where you get to the other expenses. I point this out because these 2 fields are allocated, they're calculated fields specifically for certain things, and you see that down here at the bottom. These are for clergy expenses, and line 2 is for depreciation, amortization that doesn't fall into those other groups. So you want to start here, and you can start listing out whatever it is that you're wanting to put in here. For example, when you come back up into line 27, you'll see now that amount is there. So now we're going to refresh. And okay, we think we're done. So we're going to go ahead and hit verify, and let's see what we're missing. Oh, wow, we're missing quite a bit of things. So as you go through, the easiest way to do this is to hit enter. We're going to do a bank product. And if you hit enter again, once you've entered the information, then it takes you to the next field. So enter, enter again. Enter, enter again. It's the fastest way to get through this. And now we are on to the 8867 and prepare due diligence. Now there's two things I have to say here. One is completing the 8867 is not the entirety of your due diligence. It is your acknowledgement that you have completed your due diligence. And second, you should never rely solely on the tax software for due diligence. The software is a guidance tool. It is not a substitute for tax knowledge. Okay? So we're going to go through. We're going to answer these questions. So in here, we want to do, let's do rent statements, and then up here, there were no documents for AOTC. So now if we hit verify, now we've got a couple of other things because we've added things. I know the primary one I'm missing is my prep ID because I started this return without it. So now we're on to the bank app. So when we come in here to the bank application, this is the bank application for TPG. You see the prep fees are already calculated off of the invoice. Okay? So you're going to want to make sure that you answer these things. We're going to do that. The status citizen. Now right here is where you can transfer the ID information that you entered on the client data sheet. So just mark that box, tab off, and then it will show you here. This is where they will mark for the fast cash advance. Now this is important to note that you want to sort of pay attention to if you're doing any of these fast cash advances. This marking this box will only give them the fast cash advance with the subsequent RT. This is what they call a post-act. So once the return is acknowledged, then they will apply that. This one is only if they want to get 25%, and then the pre-act advance is once the return has been submitted, even if the IRS hasn't, before the IRS opens and hasn't acknowledged, they can apply for that, but you want to make sure that you check that box. Okay? We're not going to apply for a fast cash advance because we're going to get an error, probably going to get an error anyway. You want to make sure that you have personally examined the unexpired government issue photo ID, and you want to mark that. So you go down, then you want to choose how they're going to get their refund, and then here's all of the fee listings. So now we're going to do a verify again. It looks like I am missing the application date. I'm going to get an error there because there's no more bank products for tax year 2019. Now earlier I had mentioned to you guys about the file options and auto adding this. And I want to show you what that looks like. So here's the file options and the fee comparison. This will show them what all the differences are in the fees. So if they get an advance, if they get the bank product, if they e-file, or if they mail it in, what the time frames are. Now when you print this, this is what it will look like. When you go down here to the bottom, you'll see that there's a place to initial what option that they want, and then they're going to sign. That is a great document for you to get signed and keep. Okay, so I'm going to go back to this 8879. We're going to remove the bank application so that we can actually get to a verify and a clean verify. So once you have the return verified successfully, your next step is going to be printing. Okay? So we're going to go to print, and this is where we're going to talk about remote signature. So you go print and you do final tax return. This is our print window. So you can click print and send to the printer. You can do sign doc, and sign doc will use the electronic signature pad. And that's where they can actually sign on the signature pad. You click accept. So we're going to go back. We're going to do final tax return here. Remote sign. Now, it's important to note on this first page, with this first pop-up, what they're asking you here is this anyone in the office to sign on the electronic signature pad. If the taxpayer is not in the office, just leave this blank, hit OK. Then you have the option to send it to the taxpayer's cell phone or the taxpayer's email or both. Same thing with the spouse. We're going to do taxpayer's cell phone. Down here at the bottom, you'll see this communications active. It's sending that remote signature. And it'll let you know that it was sent successfully. You hit OK. And now if we go over here on this left-hand side to remote signature, you'll see that this remote signature is pending. This will tell you when it was signed, and here's the link for them to sign it. Tell you when the preparer signed, when the ERO signed. So now it's just waiting on the taxpayer. If you need to delete this, if it hasn't been signed, you can delete, or if you need to resend it because they didn't get the text message, their phone was off, whatever it is, you can click resend here. Okay, once they sign and they submit it back, it'll come in automatically right here into the document archive, and it'll say signed full tax return. Let's see if I can do that real quick from my phone. So when they get the text message, it's going to prompt them to enter their date of birth, the last 4 digits of their social, and their name. And we have a video on our YouTube channel that will actually show you how all of this is done. So I've gone ahead and actually submitted. It'll show you the taxpayer end. It also shows you how they submit their return through the TaxPass app too. So I encourage you guys, if you go follow our YouTube, go to our YouTube channel and subscribe. So when we come back, now you see the signed full tax return here. So if we open this, when we go down to the 8879, for example, you're going to see that signature. Very, very easy. You also see the ERO signature down here at the bottom. Simple, fast, easy. Now, that leads us to the document archive, since we're in this section already. Document archive, you've got a couple of options. You can scan documents using the 2D barcode scanner. You can also import documents. And I'll show you how to import documents. So you go import, you click file name, and you can choose any file that you want. Any type of file that you want. For example, let's choose, I don't even know what this is. We're going to choose that. You type in the description. You choose the type. You're okay. Now my file is way too big, so it won't let me do it, but let's choose a smaller file then. Okay, we'll choose, yeah, we'll do that one. So you'll see now that that file is in there. When we open it, it's going to tell us that there it is. You can also delete documents, and you can email documents. So if you click email, you can type in the subject of the email, and then hit OK, and it should send that right out. I'm going to show you what the scan function does. So you have this option here, and you just kind of, you just click snap, and it'll take a picture of the document. It's a really terrible representation of it, but that's essentially what you do. You type in that information, you click save, and that's it. So that's the entirety of the document archive right there. Now we're going to go back to the print. So we're going to do print final tax return. You can also hit the print button. It takes you to the same place. The next options down are going to be PDF. I encourage you that if you're going to do a PDF of any kind, you do an encrypt PDF. The IRS requires them to be encrypted. So you can click PDF, that'll generate a PDF. You can also email a PDF copy of the tax return. So you do email. This is what the password is going to be. Now, by default, it uses the last 4 letters, or the first 4 letters of the last name and the last 4 of the social. The program is going to generate that for you. Now, you can enter any password you want in here. When you click OK, it's going to bring up that email window. And this is the email template. It tells them here's everything that you need. So what I recommend what you can do is send the email attachment password or text the attachment password directly to them, or do both. So if you hit OK here, what will happen, they'll get the password to open that PDF. They'll get it via text and email if you have it set up that way, if you sent it that way. Okay, so this is a signed return. We've got everything back. We're ready to queue this return for transmit. So now we want to queue. You're going to mark queue. You're going to click queue, and you'll see the status says now return is queued. Now that does not mean that the return has been sent. So when you go back to the WIP, or you can click transmit from here, you'll see it says 1040 tax returns. We're going to go to filter. You'll see that return is still here. And then you can remove it if you want to. I'm going to remove it for the purposes of this. And then you click transmit. That sends the return off. And then you'll get those statuses back. That's the entirety of the return process. The software is very, very easy to use. And I encourage you, again, to take a look at those tutorials. And let me show you where those tutorials are located inside the software folder. So if you go into your File Explorer to your local C, I'm using Xlink 19, for example, but for this coming year, if you go to Xlink 20, the docs are right here inside this folder. And this tutorial document is also posted to, and the 2020 tutorials are actually posted to the SimpleTAX support site, the same place that you download the software. I encourage everyone to do these. It will walk you through every step of creating a return. It's the fastest and easiest way to learn this software and really truly get comfortable with it.